من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. أما بعد, so the last thing we talked about in this series was about manners related to gatherings. When you're next to your companion, when you visit people, when you're visited, and all of that. And the last thing was point number 33 was a specific advice that he, rahimahullah, had given to Muslim women, Muslim sisters, about how frequently you would visit another sister, and during those visits, what you should be talking about and what you should avoid. Because as I said before, it happens, and it's true, that our sisters are more social than the brothers. I mean, there are exceptions, of course, but in general, right? The ladies are more social than men, and for that reason, they would need to remember and emphasize and highlight the manners of the gathering, adabul majlis. So what happens is how you enter, when you communicate that you're interested in visiting, if somebody declines an invitation, how you should feel about it. And we said before that you should give excuses to people and not think the worst of them. If somebody is unable to receive you, they're unable to receive you, and sometimes they can express the excuse to you and sometimes they can't. Right? Sometimes they simply cannot. Sometimes you text someone and they're able to respond in time, and sometimes they cannot. I'm not talking about a habit where someone is basically lazy and negligent. I'm not talking about that. But I'm talking about sometimes, as an exception, someone is unable to reply in time, and you must seek for them an excuse. The first thing that should come to your mind is an excuse. That is, they must have something. And for that, for us to develop such a reputation, then we need to be prompt and punctual and on time. Right? Rather than develop a person, well, this is just his habit. He'll reply in a couple of days. He'll reply whenever. So if that's the case, if this is how you behave, then other people will be inclined to behave in the same way. Right? Or not? Absolutely. And if you're late in your appointments, do I need to keep time? No, I don't. Because I know that I'm expecting, and that's how it develops into a very bad habit. If you're late 5 minutes, or 5 minutes is okay. If you're late half an hour to an appointment, I know that when we say 5 o'clock, then none of us is going to show at 5 o'clock. So I won't show up until 5 o'clock. It'll be 5:30 for me. So both of us will learn to break the rule. Both of us will learn bad habits because you have taught it to me and I've accepted it. So it's the same thing, right? So we're not talking here about a habit. We're talking about somebody who is unable to receive you, and you must seek excuses for them. You either say, there's an excuse and I know about, maybe this, maybe that, but even if you exhaust all excuses, you'll say to yourself, maybe there is something I don't know about. Maybe they're going through some difficulties and I don't know about them. They did not share that with me. So you actually give the benefit of the doubt to your brothers and to your sisters. In point number 34, he says, rahimahullah, and we can inshallah be finishing the book tonight, inshallah. He says, إِذَا دَخَلْتَ مَكَانًا فِيهِ نِيَامٍ. He says, if you enter a place where people are asleep, فَرَاعِهِمْ وَتَلَطَّفْ فِي حَرَكَتِكَ وَصَوْتِكَ عِنْدَهُم. So he says, take care not to wake them up. Take care not to disturb them. And be gentle in how you move and how you talk and how you speak, because you don't want to disturb them and you don't want to wake them up. He says, فَكُنْ رَفِيقًا لَطِيفًا. Be kind and be gentle. Because he said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, مَنْ يُحْرَمِ الرِّفْقَ يُحْرَمِ الْخَيْرَ كُلَّهُ. The one who is denied kindness or gentleness, he is denied all of goodness. That is, if someone is not kind and is not gentle, as if he is deprived of all good. And so the opposite is true, that if Allah Azza wa Jal had given you the wisdom to be gentle and kind, then there is plenty of good in you, and you'll be able to achieve a lot of good. And this is a general Islamic principle. I'll come inshallah to explain it, but let's just finish up this point. Al-Miqdad ibn al-Aswad radiyallahu anhu said, he's describing how they were with the Prophet ﷺ and how the Prophet was with them. So this is experiential. This is something that happened. This is not something that the Prophet had said only, but this is how he behaved. And that's important. Because sometimes, and not with the Prophet definitely, but sometimes we say, we speak, we advise, but this is not how we behave. Here you will see how the Prophet ﷺ, in addition to his admonitions or his reminders, this is also how he behaved. He says, كُنَّا نَرْفَعُ لِرَسُولِ اللَّهِ نَصِيبَهُ مِنَ اللَّبَنِ. He says, we used to preserve for the Prophet ﷺ his portion of milk. Right, so that they would get milk and they will distribute it in portion. I'll take mine, he'll take hers. And then they'll reserve a portion to the Prophet ﷺ. قال فيجيء من الليل فيسلم تسليما لا يوقظ النائم ويسمع اليقظان. So when he comes at night, he will give a salam. Taslim, a kind of a salam that does not wake up the one who is asleep, but you will hear it if you're awake. So it's in the middle, it's gentle. So if you're asleep, it's not going to wake you up and it's not going to disturb you. So he doesn't come sallallahu alayhi wasallam into the house announcing, right, in a very loud voice, Assalamu alaikum. No, it doesn't do that. But rather he acknowledges or he knows that there are some people who may be asleep, so I'm not going to disturb them. But some people are there who may be awake, so I'll give salam to them. So you will choose a middle ground, a middle path between the two that is going to fulfill the purpose. So it's the same thing when you're coming home or with your neighbors. So you come home, you gotta be gentle, and remember this Islamic principle, you gotta be gentle. So when you come home, if some of your family is asleep, or when you enter, when you knock on the door, ring the bell, or when you enter the home, or when you say salam, accommodate those who are asleep. If you're gonna stay up, and some of your family members are going to go to bed early, maybe because they're younger, they're older, or maybe they have work early the next day, accommodate that they're going to bed and don't disturb them. Whatever you're going to be doing. If you're going to come back late and they're asleep, accommodate when you enter the home, how you open the door, how you close it, right? How you finish up whatever you want to finish up before you go to bed. Accommodate all of that. Remembering the example of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You're not just going to disturb somebody else because you are commanded to be gentle and kind. Same thing, when you enter the masjid, even in the masjid, some people when they are reading the Quran, you got to accommodate your neighbor because your neighbor is doing what? Reading the Quran like you or in salah like you. So you can't be too loud. Right? If you're alone in the masjid, fine. But if there's a neighbor right next to you, well, he too or she too wants to read the Quran, just like you. He and she also want to pray and they want to concentrate. So you're not going to compete with them and they also compete with you, but you accommodate all. And this is actually a direction from the Prophet ﷺ, because he said, فَكُلُّكُمْ يُنَاجِ رَبَّهُ, meaning don't raise your voice when you're reading the Quran. Don't raise your voice where you would overwhelm the other person or disturb the other person, because he said sallallahu alaihi wasallam, each of you is conversing with his creator, is talking to Allah Azza wa Jal, so don't disturb the other person. So this is how you accommodate other people around you. Okay? And when we're talking about gentleness as a general principle, and he mentioned this before, rahimahullah, he mentioned this before, being kind and gentle in everything that you do. And in fact, as I said, that it's a general principle that this is to be applied everywhere. And this is the norm everywhere, and firmness becomes an exception when gentleness is no longer possible. Like, when do you fight the non-believers? After what? Da'wah, isn't it? You give da'wah first, and you invite to Islam. When do you become firm? When they rejected, they resisted, and they start attacking, okay, what do? Then you become firm. So gentleness is in all matters, with the non-Muslims and with the Muslims, with family and with friends. And how you drive. Drive with gentleness and kindness. Even if others around you are not doing the same thing. Right? Because there's no partition to it. You can't say, I'm going to be gentle here but not there. It's an attribute, it's a sifa, it's a feature in you. If you allow someone, to make you hard and firm unnecessarily, not hard, even harsh, Unnecessarily, you'll be harsh everywhere else. But if you maintain that character everywhere else, in this area, you'll be able to practice it in other areas. But if you're corrupted here, it's going to be corrupt. If you lose it here, you're going to lose it over there. So how you drive, be gentle and kind. Because it's going to affect how you enter your home or how you enter your workplace. At work, you got to be gentle and kind. When you enter your home, you be gentle and kind. How you want to solve a dispute and an argument is not by being harsh. The first response is to be gentle and kind. And he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that you will have all good, a possession of all good, if you continue to be gentle and kind. Not harsh, but gentle and kind. And the exception is, once all of that fails, then yes, you can be firm. In dealing with your kids, in the kids dealing with their parents, in dealing with your spouse, in dealing with your neighbor, same thing. Always be gentle and kind. And also, keeping your voice down, it's also important with your neighbor. We didn't emphasize this. I talked about it maybe in a couple of other, 2 lectures ago, maybe. It says, with your neighbors. So if you're coming, especially like some masjids are in residential areas. So in Isha, when Isha is late, or in Fajr, you're coming out of the masjid. To you what? You've been awake for a while, but to them, they're still asleep. Or in Ramadan, if in residential areas, neighbors start complaining, right, about Muslims. Why? Because of our kids, and they're playing outside. To them, it's just day. It has become day. For all of us, it's all up. But other people, well, that's not their pattern. So you really have to accommodate that. If I'm praying Taraweeh, okay, and almost everybody is up, you have to realize that not everybody is up. So you have to respect them, and you have to be gentle and kind, and you have to keep your voice down. You're coming to Fajr or leaving to Fajr, okay, when you leave, you have to remember that everybody is still asleep. So don't annoy other people, because it's an impression. They're going to look at you, and you're going to be a representative of Islam and Muslims, but it's also because it's upsetting to Allah Azza wa Jal when you do this. More importantly than what other people are going to think, is that it is upsetting to Allah Azza wa Jal, because that's not how you're supposed to behave. You are supposed to be gentle, and it's this gentleness that brings people to Islam and brings other Muslims to Islam. When other Muslims see you behave in that way, inviting to people, discussing a religious issue in that way. Even if the other person is stubborn. Have some people will come to you and they'll say this and that about Islam, Muslim or non-Muslim. If you become really angry and irritated, and you begin, giving them, replying with insults and irritated comments, you're not going to help the cause. But if you're kind and you're collected and you understand what they're saying, and you try to understand why they're saying it, and give them the best response that you can, you definitely will bring them closer rather than chase them away. So remember this gentleness and kindness as being a general principle you apply everywhere. He says also, this is point number 35, he says, إِذَا دُعِيتَ إِلَىٰ عَقْدِ نِكَاحٍ, if you are invited to a nikah, a wedding, قَالَ فَاشْهَدْهُ, go witness, answer that invitation. مَا لَمْ يَكُنْ فِيهِ مُحَرَّمَاتٍ شَرْعِيَّةٍ, as long as there is no haram in it. Okay, as long as there is no haram in it. So he mentions here a hadith, announce the nikah and make it in the masjids. That's da'if. Okay, so there's no hadith about the virtue of having nikah in the masjid. It had become a habit in the West because usually the one who officiates, the imam, is in the masjid. But sometimes the imam could be invited to somebody's home or to a hall. So there's no particular virtue to it being in the masjid. It can be in any place. But the hadith that is authentic, he says, أَعْلِنُ النِّكَاحِ, kind of broadcast or announce the nikah. Okay, publicize it. And he said also in a hadith sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, it is Hasan, فَصْلٌ مَا بَيْنَ الْحَلَالِ وَالْحَرَامِ الصَّوْتُ وَالدُّفُّ فِي النِّكَاحِ. He says, what distinguishes between halal and haram is a sawt, meaning the announcement or the publicity, and a duf, the tambourine, in a nikah. So the announcement, he said sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, is one of the things that distinguish between halal and haram. Of course, there are other differences. Haram is haram. There are no witnesses, right? There is no wali, there is no mahar. Haram is basically a sin, a sinful relationship. Halal has its foundations, like the wali and the witnesses and the mahr of all of that. That's good. But what he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is that one of the things that distinguish between halal and haram in marriage and sin, fornication, is that sin usually happens in secret. Okay? It's hidden. Yeah? As long if people have haya still, it is hidden. But marriage is public. So this is how you have to announce nikah, publicize it. And so part of aiding in the publicity of nikah is that when you're invited, you what? Attend. So if it's a walima, if it's the da'wah, the invitation is to the walima of the nikah, and you have really no excuse not to attend, it's an obligation on you to attend. So I said, remember that we enumerated the rights of the Muslim upon a Muslim, and we said ijabatu da'wah, answering their invitations. So it's generally, if a Muslim invites you, and here we're assuming there is no haram. So a Muslim invites you, generally, it's recommended that you answer that invitation or accept that invitation. For a walima in the wedding, okay, there is no excuse for you not to attend, and excuse for you to skip it. You have to attend it. And there are benefits, of course, to that. There are benefits to this. One of them is it publicizes the nikah. When everybody comes in and they witnesses that so-and-so had married so-and-so, it becomes clear that this is his wife, this is her husband. So everybody knows that this is halal according to the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he says here, فَفِي حُضُورِكَ لِلْعَقْدِ, he says, when you enter, تحقيق للإعلان المطلوب, it says it gets publicized, and then more and more people witness it. And you also do what? You also make your brother or you make your sister happy, because it's a joyous occasion. So you participate and you make dua to them. And he said here, إذا دعيت إلى ذلك فلتكن نيتك في الإجابة أنك تشهد دعوة مباركة وحفلة سرور مشروع أمر النبي بحضورها. So he says, what is your intention when you want to attend? And that's an important thing. Is what is your intention when you want to attend? We say also, what is your intention when you are inviting people to your wedding? That's important. What is your intention? So your intention should be, first of all, is what? Is that I want to publicize this. And this is the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's why I'm inviting people. It's not to show off. So a lot of people, right, and it's cultural but also personal. It becomes what? An occasion where I would show people how much I have and our status. And we're going to have it in this hall. And we're going to invite those people. And we're going to have this food. Why all of this? Because somebody else did it that way and we're not less than them. So it becomes an act of competition. So first of all, you want to ask yourself, why am I inviting people to this walima? And by the way, the walima or that wedding invitation does not have to be, first of all, a burden. It doesn't need to. I know that there are some cultural practices, and some of these cultural practices are okay. Some of these cultural practices are unnecessary. Some of these cultural practices are haram. And you want to have to distinguish between all of them. So one of the cultural practices where, and you witness that, different from one community to the other, where they bring the groom and the bride and they put them on the chair and they sit in front of everybody. And the problem is that the bride is in full makeup, with all her jewelry, all the decorations, all the beautification, and she's sitting there on a stage in front of everybody. That is cultural, but that is what? Acceptable? Absolutely not. That's not acceptable. Right? In addition to the mixing, in addition to the music, in addition, to the dancing, etc., etc., etc. And this is, I'm talking about somewhat a conservative, practice. There are people who go way too liberal with this. I'm not even talking about those people. I'm talking about some Muslims who are practicing, but they still do these things. I said, this is not acceptable. And that's an excuse for you not to attend such a wedding. He says, if these things are happening, that's an excuse for you not to answer that call and not to accept that invitation. And you say, and you can, it's up to you and how diplomatic you want to be, but you can say, I can't attend it because of this. Or at least you will go, give your salam, give your dua, and then you head back. So you're not attending this thing. So anyway, you got to distinguish between what is culturally appropriate and culturally inappropriate. That's one. And it's important to start your life on the right path. This is the first thing that you're doing together as my bride, as my groom. The first thing that we're doing together, how you want to start. And there's pressure from this family and there's pressure from that family. I understand. But it's still ultimately, if you are confident, it's still your wedding. So you decide how you want to do it. So the second thing is that it does not have to be a burden, a financial burden. Okay? So the Prophet ﷺ told a Sahabi, أَوْلِمْ وَلَوْ بِشَاءٍ. He says, have a walima, have a walima invitation, food, even if it's just a sheep. Just one thing, one sheep, and you invite everybody to it. And another, I think the Prophet ﷺ, I think on one of his wives, it was just basically dates mixed with flour and whatever. It's a kind of food that they have, but it's very simple and very modest. Dates with flour and it gets mixed together or cooked. That was it. There was nothing more than that. The purpose is not necessarily to feed, for you to come in and leave, full of meat. That's not it. The purpose of it is what? The invitation and the gathering, an announcement, and people coming in and giving you this dua, and then leaving. That's it. That's the purpose of it. You make people happy, you make the families happy, yes. Okay? But the main purpose of it is what? That. So it doesn't have to be a burden, and so you don't even have to start your life with debt. Don't have to start your life spending thousands of dollars on this hall or in this caterer or whatever. You could save all of that, but actually have something modest enough that announces your wedding and at the same time fulfills whatever you need to fulfill emotionally, and satisfies also your parents. So you choose. And when he's saying here, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the difference between halal and haram is as-sawt. We said as-sawt is the announcement. Ad-duf is a tambourine. And you know what the tambourine is, what ad-duf is. So the duf is like, it's a musical instrument. And the Prophet ﷺ here, especially in nikah, had allowed it. So it's like a drum, but it's not covered from both sides. It's covered from one side only. And it doesn't have these metal discs at the sides. So it's just like one leather. It's like one leather part covering one part. The other part is empty, is open. So that's what the duf is. So he says this is allowed in the nikah. So it's allowed absolutely for the sisters. And if the sisters want to strike the duf and sing, and they want to dance, as long as the dance is appropriate and it's not mixed and the men cannot see them, they can do that. Okay? So if they want to use the duf, you can say duf or def. If they want to use the def and they want to sing, as long as the singing doesn't reach the men, and they want to dance, as long as the dance is appropriate, it's not an erotic type of dancing, like belly dancing, right? As long as that is okay. For the men, some scholars allow the deaf, some scholars don't. Most of the scholars allow it, actually. The deaf for the men, most scholars allow it. So if they want to use that for the men, if your opinion not, that's fine. If you're of the opinion it's okay, that's fine as well. But some scholars do allow it, or the majority allow the men to use the deaf and also to sing. And if they want to actually dance appropriately, right? There are some dances that are appropriate. That's fine. That's okay with that, right? And it's all to do what? To express happiness, okay? And participate in the happiness of the family. So if a person does that, that's fine as well. And if a person does it with a good intention, he gets rewarded for it, right? So this is why you are attending. And the greeting, when you meet the family and meet the groom and the bride, he said, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, his greeting was, Barakallahu laka wa alayka wa jama'a baynakuma fi khayr. May Allah bless for you and upon you and unite you in good. May Allah, Barakallahu laka wa alayka, may Allah bless for you, give barakah for you, upon you, and unite you is good. And he says here, وَلَا تُهَنِّئُهُ بِالْقَوْلِ الَّذِي يُهَنِّئُ بِهِ بَعْضُ النَّاسِ بِالرَّفَاءِ وَالْبَنِينَ. He says, do not say بِالرَّفَاءِ وَالْبَنِينَ. This is more relevant to Arabic-speaking people rather than English-speaking people, because no one in English would know what الرَّفَاء وَالْبَنِينَ is. But there's a hadith where one of the Sahaba got married, and they told him, Birrafa'i wal banin. Birrafa' wal banin means what? Birrafa' means with harmony and children. Meaning they're saying, with harmony, meaning this may this proceed with harmony and children. So he said, do not say this. We were forbidden to say that, but rather say, Barakallahu laka wa fika. Or Barakallahu laka wa alayk. So don't say this, we were forbidden to say that, but say, may Allah bless for you and upon you. Meaning, may Allah bless for you and bless you. It says, because we were forbidden to say that. Now the scholars have said, why is it that that phrase, Birrafa'i wal banin, was forbidden? Even though, what is it saying? With harmony and children. So they speculate and they say, first of all, it may be because Allah's name is not mentioned there. It just says, may you have harmony and children. So Allah's name is not mentioned. The other thing is that they say that maybe it's because it says al-banin, meaning that it's sons, not daughters. Because the people of Jahiliyyah favored what? Sons, right? Not daughters, right? So that was their first choice. And we're still living in that type of Jahiliyyah till today. Muslim and non-Muslim. The third interpretation or explanation of why that may be the case, they say it wasn't a dua, but it was actually kind of a good luck thing to say. And when they were saying it, it wasn't a dua, but rather that if they say it, you're going to get good luck. You're going to get all of that. So they were forbidden to say that. Maybe there's a fourth reason, wallahu a'lam, which is what, if you say this one, if you get used to saying this one, you're going to end up not using the dua that comes from the Prophet ﷺ. Meaning, if your habit is to say, Birrafa' wal banin, and that was a jahili custom, and you continue with that, you're not going to end up saying and remembering the command of the Prophet ﷺ or the sunnah of the Prophet to pray for barakah for them. So, which is better? Just to simply say, may you have harmony and children, or rather say, may Allah bless you and bless for you and unite you in good. Definitely asking for barakah. Asking for barakah. And that is one of also the benefit of inviting people to your wedding and going to that place. Because the more people that you invite, the more people will come to you and say what? That dua. We should say it. You're being invited. So more and more people will come and pray for barakah for you and your family. Barakah for you and your family. So you're going to get as much dua as people that you've invited. Okay? As long as it doesn't break your back. It's not going to invite the whole city. But as many as you can. But you're going to get that. And you get the reward yourself of saying that dua to somebody else. And maybe Allah will accept it. And there's here benefit in it. That is, if there is an Islamic phrase, if there is an Islamic dua, if there is an Islamic greeting, okay, hold on to it and don't replace it with something else. Because when you replace it with something else, you'll forget the Islamic one. That's why when you enter, right, especially for the young among us, when you enter, it's not hi and hello. Okay? And it's not, good morning or good afternoon. Does anybody say good morning, good afternoon? I don't know. Anyway, it's not hi and hello, or what's up, or how you doing. It's not that. It's first what? Assalamu alaikum. That's the first thing that I want to hear from you. Assalamu alaikum. Then say your highs and hellos. But the first thing is Assalamu alaikum, because if you get used to highs and hellos, alaikum assalam disappears. It doesn't come back. So there's always a competition between the Islamic phrase, the Islamic terminology, and the non-Islamic phrases and non-Islamic terminology. And if you lose and sacrifice that Islamic phrase and terminology, you've lost a lot of good. A lot of good. The name of Allah has evaporated, left you. And you're left with what? Nonsense. Things that do not, لا يسمن ولا يغني من جوع. It does not help you. It doesn't satisfy you. Okay, that's why one of the things also that the Prophet ﷺ, sort of related but not so related, is he called Salatul Isha al-Isha. And he said the A'rab, the Bedouins, call it al-Itma or al-Atama. He says, فَلَا يَغْلِبَنَّكُمْ عَلَيْهَا. He says, let them not overtake you by emphasizing that name so that it replaces the salah of al-Isha. Even though it's not haram, both are names, or itma or atama, right? It's just darkness. But he said what? It is called Isha. So hold on to that name, because others have a different name to it. Let them not compete and then win that competition. You hold on to al-Isha. And they did, and they won. Now it's Isha. Nobody knows it by that other name, because that time of the night. No one knows it by Salat al-Itma. Okay? But Salat al-Isha. So Islamic terminologies are important because they make sense collectively, and because they bring Allah Azza wa Jal into the mix. Right? So, Barakallahu laka wa baraka alayk wa jama'a baynakuma fi khair. Right. And then the last thing, inshallah, that we will say, and then we'll take your questions. As I said, it's at the end of the book. He says, at the conclusion, he says, these are a bunch or several Islamic manners that I've written down. And he says, the best way or the best place for you to apply them is your house and the house of your brother, okay? Or the house of your sister. وَشَخْصُكَ وَشَخْصُ أَخِيكَ. Within you, within yourself, and when you're talking to your brother. فَلَا تَتْسَاهَلْ فِي الْقِيَامِ بِهَا فِي مَا بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَ إِخْوَانِكَ. He says, so do not disregard them between you and your brother, between you and your friend. Considering that, well, he's just my brother, he's just my friend, he's just, she's just my sister. We're in the same house, we visit each other often, I don't have to observe these rules. He says, do not disregard them or neglect them because of that. فَأَحَقُّ النَّاسِ بِالْبِرِّ وَاللُّطْفِ مِنْكَ أَهْلُكَ وَأَصْحَابُكَ. He says, the one who deserves your greatest kindness and your greatest attention is who? أَهْلُكَ وَأَصْحَابُكَ, is your family. Okay? And that's why, and you know this very well. He says, when someone came to the Prophet ﷺ and he says, who is the one who deserves my best companionship? My best behavior when I keep their company, my best behavior, my best words, that should be the best words. Who is? And what did he say? He says, ummuk. Thumma ummuk, thumma ummuk, thumma abuk. Says your mother, then your mother, then your mother, then your father. Okay? So we today, and we've got it reversed. That is, when we learn these manners, we think about in our head that, okay, I'm going to practice this where? In the masjid. I'm going to practice this with my neighbor. Okay? I hope it reaches that level where we're thinking about, I'm going to do it with my neighbor. I'm going to practice this in my workplace. I'm going to practice this at the university, which is all good. But we forget that the first place where you should be practicing all of this is home. It's your home. Because that's where you are really who you are. Everywhere else, we can pretend. Everywhere else, I can try to affect. Okay? And, pretend that I'm this and pretend. But home is where you're actually genuine. So your good manners, how good of manners you have or terrible, show themselves at home. It's easy to be patient outside. Oh, not easy, easier. It's easier to be patient outside. But if you want to find yourself, if you're patient or not, see if you're patient at home, with your kids and with your spouse. Then you'll find if you're patient, or if you're kind, or if you preserve your tongue, or if you're not obscene, you're not vulgar, or if you hold your anger. All these things inside the home are far more important than outside the home. Because if you apply them in, then you can apply them outside. And if you apply them in, you're teaching them to your spouse, you're teaching them to your kids, and in fact, you're teaching them to your parents as well. Because you can teach your parents, not by lecturing them, but by good behavior. So you're teaching those on the inside. If you're teaching us on the inside these things, then all of us can go on the outside and teach it to other people as well. So the first thing, when we're talking about these manners, we talked about salam, we talked about, I don't know, we've talked about smiling, but we talked about salam. There is smiling, there is knocking on the door, there is, observing and safeguarding your tongue, safeguarding your eye, all of these things inside the home first, and from that consider it to be a launch pad into your practice of Islamic manners everywhere else. But what he said about it here, don't disregard them. That is very true. When you learn anything that is even small, don't say it's insignificant and you forget about it, or I'll do it next time. Because if you sacrifice it now, you're not going to be able to practice it the next time. You've weakened yourself. So you enter your home and remember that the first thing that you should say is salam. Say it. Say it. Even if it wasn't your habit, say it. The first time you'll be embarrassed. The first time you'll have to hear comments like, oh, you're saying salam now? Oh, you're changing your habit? That's okay. But don't be embarrassed. Say salam. Because the next time, it'll be easier to say salam, and then it becomes a habit. But if you accept the whisper of the shaitan that it's not that important, it's not that important, then the shaitan will convince you that it's not that important continuously, and you'll forget about it. So all these manners, if you hear anything, no matter how you think it is insignificant, practice it. Practice it. And don't ask, that's why we say, don't ask, is it sunnah? Do I have to do it? Do I not have to do it? Your attitude should be, I need to do it. And if you do it, you'll gain more and more of the pleasure of Allah Azza wa Jal. And these things that used to look difficult are not going to be difficult, bi'idhnillah. So alhamdulillah, this is the conclusion of the book. Hope that inshallah that we emphasized some important things that we can follow. And that's not, of course, an exhaustive examination of Islamic manners. We'll probably come back and revisit them sooner or later, inshallah, but we will do that in a even more detailed fashion if Allah Azza wa Jal allows it. So we'll take a break, inshallah, next week. So we're not going to have anything next week. And the week after, we will, inshallah, reconvene with a new topic, inshallah. I'm still taking recommendations. If you have any recommendations, I have one thought in mind, but we'll see. But I will take more of your recommendations, inshallah, between now and then to see if there's something that you would like for us to discuss and know about. Then we can do that, inshallah, Rabbil Alameen. This is it. Let me know, inshallah, if you have any questions about what we've said, specifically either tonight or throughout that series. Naam, inshallah. So this is live stream on my Facebook. The masjid is live streaming it both on their Facebook and